everyone, my name is Kelly from Houseplants Gone Wild. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a video just to show you a few of the houseplants in my collection. I did do one earlier about an unboxing back in June for a Philodendron arubescens, Pink Princess. That's this one right here. Named it Diana, makes it a little bit easier to try and memorize all the care tips that I have for it. For this one, it's getting a little bit more pink variation all the time, but it is slower growing just because it is the winter time. So yeah, I'm going to go through a few of the houseplants that I got and hope you enjoy. So I figured since we were here, we may as well start with the Philodendron arubescens, the Pink Princess, Diana. This plant here, it is quite low maintenance. It doesn't need a whole lot of light. You can leave it in sort of a dimmer area. I have this is right next to our east-facing window. Southeast, this one here behind me, that's more of a southwest. We do get a little bit more exposure in the summertime just because it seems the sun's a little bit more intense with that afternoon light coming in. I have this right next to my armchair here so that way I can keep a close eye on it. For watering wise, I usually like to let this one dry out quite a bit. I actually, with all my houseplants, I pick them up and I feel how heavy they are. So, and I always compare that to the pot size and the canopy size. If the canopy size is quite large, the pot's quite large, and it feels heavy, it probably doesn't need water. For this one here, it's still quite heavy compared to the size that it's putting out right now, and the same with the pot size. So this one I'm gonna give a few more days before I'll pick it up again and see if it needs water. You can also put your finger in the soil, just feel, you know, if it's like quite wet. There is some dirt that's sticking to my fingers, so it's not too bad, but I'm gonna let it wait a little bit longer because especially with the winter time, it's always best to let them dry out a little bit more than usual. And then you might notice with a few of your pots in the wintertime, they start to get a little bit of sort of like a mold on the outside. That's just normal. That's the bacteria in the soil and the water pushing it all out. It can't evaporate as quickly because it's not as warm in the house. The next one that I have here, one of my newer ones, and one of my favorites, is a Dieffenbachia reflector. So this one here, also known as a dumb cane. I have quite a few in my collection for dumb canes. They are, as they say, a dumb cane. So if you get the sap on your hands and touch your nose, touch your mouth, or anywhere in around your mouth, I guess, they can actually close off your airway. They have a poison in them, so it's something to watch out for if you have pets or kids. This one here has sort of a velvety textured leaves and sort of a deep green and that nice splash of green on there. So this is one of my favorites. It's not very big right now. I'm hoping that I can get it a little bit larger. I'm waiting for these two pups down here on the bottom to kind of spring up a little bit more. That way in the springtime I can maybe divide it, have more, because they're just so beautiful. Let's see here. I have this. This is one of my favorites, just from that white. This is a marble pothos. Also, you know, this corner, not a whole lot of light, especially in winter time. But this one here is definitely a lot more easy to take care of than most houseplants, I find. Pothos, that's always a really good go-to to start off with. This one here, because it's a golden pothos, you can see it's got that yellowing leaves, but when I had it under my grow lights, it was getting these beautiful, deep white leaves. And it's actually a little bit of a texture that goes along with it. So you definitely have a few of them. When I first moved it, it was not really liking it, so the leaves, they reverted a little bit, but it is still out of the same stem, putting out some variation. It's just a little bit of a different hue, so I'm going to wait and see. If it's unhappy here, I can't always move it back under the grow lights, but I'm thinking in the summertime they'll definitely have a lot more growth coming out. What else do we have here? This is a good one. This is a Aspidastra cast iron plant. So this one here, this is quite low maintenance as well. This one, larger pot, larger canopy. I'm always picking it up so I can see how much weight it's got to it, water weight. They do not like any direct sunlight. So for this one here, I let it dry out a decent amount. It's got an okay light source right behind me here. But it is under a covered deck right behind me. So it doesn't get direct sunlight, but it is still quite bright. This one, you don't have to fertilize as often as people think just because they're so green and they tend to feed them quite heavily. Summertime, definitely the growing season, you can definitely give it some more water and some more fertilizer, but they are a slower grower. One thing I have noticed is the leaf tips, they'll start to go brown, and that's also a humidity thing. And if you're letting it dry out way too much and then just dousing it with water, it's definitely going to have a couple issues, and that can be expressed through its foliage. So this one here, a little bit slower of a growth, a lot more compact, but it does very well in lower light conditions. So I like to have that one sort of available if I have a darker corner. I can shuffle it around and see where it goes. This one right behind me, a little bit too big to pick up, a Monstera deliciosa, so the Swiss cheese plant. This one, larger pot, I have it in these. I made these little pot covers. I thought they're kind of different than the usual terracotta on them. They like to keep it fairly moist, but not wet. Not like a fern either, not moist all the time. So this one I will let dry out a fair amount. I'll pick it up, and when I see that the pot size is quite large, canopy is large, and it's quite light, I'll be sure to water it. Always water and make sure that there's water coming through down here on the tray. It's a tray that's small scale size. It looks a lot like this, so I put pebbles in the bottom so that way air circulation can get underneath. It prevents any like excess water from just sitting there and clogging the drainage hole. This way that the plant, it gets a little bit of air circulation, and the roots do need air to grow, so you don't want those roots constantly being suffocated by water. You want them to have a little bit of air circulation. And as you can see, I use a lot of terracotta because it's just great, especially for indoor house plants. If you have a lot of moisture, if you love your plants like liquid-wise like me, I always water my plants way too much, and yeah, then they just suffer. So terracotta can really help with that to a certain extent. You can kind of tell, I guess, when you are giving it too much love. Sometimes these pots, they just collect a lot of mold, but that's normal. You know, it is wintertime. They are growing slower. They are using a lot less water, and it's not wicking away nearly as much. So back to the Monstera deliciosa. I think I have 3 of them right now that are growing, and they're doing pretty well. They're not really putting a lot of shoots out and new leaves just this time of the year. It's, you know, it's early November or January, wow. And they're just being a little bit slower, but that's fine. This one behind me here is quite young. It's in a larger pot because the one in the nursery that I first got it from, they had it in a large planter pot, and it was so root bound that I was sort of astonished that the canopy size was so small and the leaves were small, but the pot and the root system was so vast and so large. So this is actually the exact same size. I believe this is a 14-inch, but it's not very deep, which is kind of nice. So I took a rake, and usually I'll do this if I'm going to get a plant that I'm kind of questioning where it came from, what condition it's in. I will rake away all the soil, and I'll give it fresh new soil, because there's fungus gnats that can thrive in there. They can lay eggs. The soil that, you know, sometimes you buy, say, an orchid, and they'll have soil like a sphagnum peat moss sort of cork inside the center, and that's where the roots will actually wrap around. And you can see it on here. I still left a little bit of that cork sitting in the center there, but I wick away all that with a nice little like rinse and get all the soil off as much as I can, really. And then I give it fresh stuff. And when you do plant it, you want to be sure to lay a thin layer of soil at the base of your pot, because the roots, they'll usually go down. And if you just put direct roots up against the bottom of the pot, it can cause for root rot. It's kind of just one of those things to watch out for. For this little guy here, I'm not very good at orchids, so don't really message me about those, because this is my second orchid. I've had it for 3 years, and this is the first time I've made it bloom, or got it to bloom. So I'm a little bit shocked. I thought it was dead, but I just kind of liked the foliage. I thought it was super cute, super minimalist, with just, you know, some leca and just some cute green foliage with those nice roots coming down. The other thing with these is watch for blackened roots. So this one I will water just so I see water pooling in at the bottom, and then I just let it dry. They don't need a whole lot of water. They don't like ice cubes. I know a lot of people say, oh, put an ice cube on your orchid. Well, that cold water can really shock a lot of plants. All of my houseplants, I use tap water, which can be a little bit tricky in the winter time, just because it's got, well, salts and everything. Summertime, I always use my rainwater, but wintertime, I get these big jugs, so that they get cranberry juice or even a milk jug, rinse it out really well, put water in it, and then just let it sit for as long as you can before you have to use it. So I have 4 of them on rotation. One of them is sitting over a vent, which I'll show you in a sec. And those ones, they take their time, but you know that it just kind of evaporates that chlorine that's in the water. There's still fluoride and salts, but it just is kind of better for the plants. You definitely don't notice as many browning tips. So I'll take you over and I'll show you some of my grow lights and the water canisters that I... This is the jugs that I use, and I rotate them. So this one here is on the heat register, just a little bit of warmth to it, but not hot. It's just a little bit above room temperature. That gives it some chance for the air to pass by, help draw out a little bit extra chlorine. And then when I'm done this one, I will move all these down and then start a sort of a rotational cycle on all of them. So this is my grow light station. I use this for a lot of the houseplants that are struggling a little bit in the winter time, lower light conditions. So up here I have 2 lights, 2 rows of grow lights. And that just is a little bit more volume, a little bit more intensity of light. So up here I have my succulents. I have like a Gollum jade plant. This one here is one of my favorites for in the summertime. It just kind of looks like coral, a little bit more tropical. So this is just a terracotta pot that I had painted. Just gives it a little bit more aesthetic touch. And then I have up here a jade plant, Calattthea Orbifolia. I can get it out without breaking anything. So this one here was kind of just a little twig when I got it last summer, and I had it out on the southeast facing deck, the patio there, and it just thrived. In the summertime, you notice the leaf tips, they might turn a little bit red. They're just reacting to the light, but as long as they're not turning brown or falling off. There is one that did fall off right here, but it just dried up. I have this one currently right now wrapped in with some bamboo twine, just because it was falling over like some jades tend to do, and I'm just trying to keep it upright. So this one, I'll take a video where I'll untwine it and I'll show you how I do it and how it, or why I do it really. Plant really reacts well to it, but they're all slow growers, so they'll take their time. They'll sort of work with the bonsai wrapping. So that's that one. There's quite a few here, but next one of my favorites is the neon pothos. This one here, it's also quite hardy. Brown leaf, you know, sometimes when you're not watering them like you should, like for me, they'll turn yellow. That one there, I haven't really been paying that much attention to this. I do put tags in a few of my plants that I'm just trying to remember, like this is a neon pothos. So when starting out with houseplants, you can find that will help you, especially when you're looking up at care tips. This one here, quite light. I keep it in its nursery pot just because I just got it last summer, later in the summer, so I want to keep it as healthy as I can, and I don't want to really disturb those roots. I just watered this one yesterday because it was quite dry, but the roots seem to be doing quite well. I'll see if I can pull it up here. So this one here, I wouldn't repot that. That's fine. You know, it's not too compact. You know, it's still like, if you look at it, you'll see it's probably like 40-50% roots, the rest soil, like from what you can visually see. So this one here, I'll give it at least till maybe the summer, maybe next, try and plant mine, repot them in the fall, or sorry, in the spring. Avoid doing it in the fall because it's just a little bit extra stress for the plants. Back here, I also have a Orbifolia tetrasperma. This one, it's a slower grower. I've had this for quite a few months and it hasn't really done much for me, but it wasn't in the greatest soil when I first got it, so I repotted it, I gave it new soil, same thing, gave the roots a good rinsing, but there is some new growth that is coming out up here and it's shooting out a aerial root. So these ones here, they call them a mini monstera, which they do kind of have the same leaf structure as most monstera, but they are actually not related. So Orbifolia tetrasperma, really good, lower light. These plants don't need a whole lot of light that are down here, and I have another shelf on the bottom because this is a single row of lights. LED, broad spectrum, they're nothing too fancy, but they are just a little bit extra lighting that some of the plants need. One plant that I have found to really enjoy is Hoyas. So this one here, I believe this is your Crimson Queen Hoya. carnosa. And so the leaves, when they get a little bit more mature, they have a white splash in them and then the green tips. But when they're new, they're young, they'll have this beautiful crimson-y red color, sorry, a little dusty, with the dark, really dark green tips. And if you see these coming out, you don't want to trim these off because sometimes they can look a little dry and a little bit brown. A lot of people tend to cut them off, and that's actually where the new leaves will come out. There's two here, these two that just came out, and they just get more mature as you move inward to the plant. A couple other ones that I have down underneath is a lot closer to the light. So I have this, a golden barrel cactus. This one here, it doesn't like water as much. You know, they're really quite hardy as long as you give them the light that they require and the warmth. You can give a cactus and most succulents actually a little bit of a cooler temperature in the wintertime and they'll flower for you. I have some string of pearls that are actually just finished flowering, and it's a beautiful sort of nutty, cinnamony smell to them. So, oh yeah, there's the tag, golden barrel cactus. Yeah, this is a really good one. Just kind of cliche cactus style. And the other one that I really enjoy that's over here, let's see if I can find it. Oh yes. Philodendron Micin. This is just a cutting that I got from a friend. Beautiful velvety leaves. They don't need a whole lot of water. They like to dry out between waterings, and they're a little bit of a slower grower when you're starting to, from a cutting. But this one here, I've had this since July, I think, is when I got it. I got it just as a cutting and put it in this small terracotta pot to help with moisture regulation, and it just started putting out its first growth. So really slow. It wasn't dead. The leaves did kind of curl inward, so I knew it was struggling, going through a little bit of a shock, but I just gave it a little bit extra light. No direct light for these ones, just kind of give them some bright indirect medium light. Water them when they're dry. Fertilize if it's a growing, you know, just give it a little bit if you can. But most of the time in the wintertime, you don't need to fertilize. If it's growing pretty avidly, like I have a pothos, a golden pothos, that one I will definitely fertilize. Usually every 4 waterings, I'll give it a good shot of just fish emulsion fertilizer. Just because it's growing, it needs the water and it needs the food. So I'll come over to here, I'll show you the golden pothos that I have. This one does continue to grow all year round. Summertime, I have it in a hanging basket on the patio. It's getting more and more full. I cut it like you wouldn't believe. I use so many cuttings from it, and it just thrives. Like this little pot, that's all golden pothos cuttings, and there's a couple leaves that might not do so well, but it's definitely rooting quite nicely. It takes its time. So I have some medium lower light plants here, like a Calattthea Orbifolia. This one here, that's just a root division. I've never tried it with the Calattthea Orbifolia, and it seems to be doing quite well. Just make sure soil is moist on that one. This Calattthea, I let it get quite dry. I pick it up, you know, there's a lot of foliage, but it's quite nice, it's quite dry. I'll probably water this one in another three or 4 days here. Put this one back. Let's see here. We also have one of the undermined ones that I have in the back corner here is a Maranta. So this one here, these also known as prayer plants. At nighttime, the leaves, or depending on your humidity, the leaves will actually fold upward and inward. They're pretty low maintenance. You know, they don't need a whole lot. They don't like a lot of direct sunlight, that's for sure. Just give them sort of medium light, nothing too bright. I have this one in a back corner, sort of the wall next to our southeast facing windows on our patio, and it does just fine. A little bit of browning tips here or there when it gets just a glimpse of the sun in the morning, so I pushed it back a little bit more. This one, still in its original nursery pot. I'm just gonna let this one ride out at least till spring. I'm gonna give it fresh soil because this soil that they used is really peat heavy, and it's retaining a little bit too much moisture. So I haven't been watering this one as much, but it has kind of struggled with the winter season just because it's retaining way too much water. But new growth, you know, like it is putting out a new leaf right here that's slowly coming out. It'll take its time, but when they start growing, they're a really good hanging flower, but they can spread pretty easy, and they're not too bad for propagating. I use mostly just water propagating for all my plants. Another one that I have here, this is a Silver Ann, I do believe. There's Silver Ann, Silver Satin, Epiprimnum. There's quite a few of, I think there's 4 of them. Very close, but this one's a Silver Ann, a lot smaller of a leaf, and they will get bigger, but they have a little bit of a twist to them. What is the other one? I believe it's a Silver Satin. The Exotica, that's the one. They'll have a thicker leaf, quite a thick leaf. And those ones don't need to be watered as much, just because the thicker leaves, the more succulent like they are. But this one's a little bit thinner, and they have a beautiful sort of silver glimmer to all the leaves. A little bit of a slower grower from a cutting, but this one I've had for about a week now, and it's already pushed out 2 leaves. So just give it a little bit of time. Another one of my favorite houseplants that I should share is the parlor palm. Oh, excuse the mold on that one. See, that's the thing, you group your plants together, they thrive off of each other's humidity, but you get a little bit of that. This is a parlor palm. It doesn't need bright light. It likes it, but it doesn't need it. It can survive in sort of a lower medium light. For one thing that I found with this is let it dry out between waterings, because as tropical as a palm sounds, it doesn't actually like to sit in water. And I miss the foliage on almost all my plants, actually. No cactus, no succulents, but quite a few of them. I'll go around with the spray bottle, and I'll give them a little bit of a misting every once in a while, just to help with keep the humidity up, and especially in the winter time, it's a lot drier. I have these little temperature readers and humidity pucks set throughout the house. These are great. These I got for Christmas. They're, I believe, from Wish. So right now it says 41% humidity. It's 19.7 degrees Celsius. Mind you, this is also by the heat register. That's where I have the cactus, and it definitely likes it a little bit drier. So this is kind of prime real estate for all my plants, taking up zones right there. But a few of them, like the Calatttheas and stuff, I have in sort of a higher humidity where they're not going to get as much breeze blow. And I can also watch them and monitor them for any direct sunlight exposure and mist them regularly. So running out of a little bit of time, it's going to be quite a long video, but I thought I'd bring us over to the Calattthea section here and a couple of my more brighter light plants. So I'll start here at the far end. This is my Stramanthe Trio Star. Just got this one. I thought about getting it for a long time, but I know that they're quite touchy just with the beautiful foliage, but you can see here it might have got a little bit too bright, a little bit of burning of the leaves. The white are usually the first thing to go, and if not the white going first, definitely the tips. They're quite sensitive to hardened material or minerals and salts in your water. So just something to consider, you know, maybe distilled water for the winter time is best, or even collecting as much rainwater in the summertime as you can. This is another one of the prayer plant ones, so the leaves will fold up depending on the humidity and the light that they're receiving. This is Calattthea Ornata, I believe. This is one that I just got in the past couple weeks here. Beautiful pink foliage, and it seems to be doing quite well. I have it in sort of a lower light condition, just so that it's tucked away by all the other plants, and it just seems to really thrive in nothing too bright. I got a Maui Queen Calattthea. This one here I got a really good deal on from one of the local hardware stores. It was just browning up, so I got it for a deal, took it home, had to twist my boyfriend's rubber arm just to keep it, but he seems happy with it. And I have some pebbles in the bottom just so that it's not sitting in any water or anything, but it seems to be thriving quite a bit. And there's a couple new leaves that are just beginning to poke through, so I'll do another video. I'm thinking more specific on Calattthea and Maranticare. This one here is that Calattthea Orbifolia. So this one's really hard for me to find in Canada, but I did manage to find one on Etsy. I'll leave the link in the description. I believe it's La Petite Planterie from Montreal. They have really good deals price-wise. The only hard part was shipping. I dealt with Canada Post for this one, and a little bit of a struggle, especially with the cold snap that we're going through right now. So definitely recommend Orbifolia. These plants here I will mist regularly just because they need that added humidity. We don't use our fireplace as much in the wintertime, but just keep in mind that that is a lot of extra heat and dryness that's coming this way. This is the Freddy that I took that cutting from. Doing quite well. Once again, it's in the original cover pot pot that I got it in, and then just a cover pot and a stand that I found at Winners. I have a Calattthea White Fusion just in the back. Calattthea Rattlesnake. If you're into Calattheas and you're just starting off, I would definitely recommend finding one of these just because they don't really require as much care and attention as most Calatheas do. These ones are actually quite hardy, I have found for myself. Just mist them. They love that. Just give them a good misting. They prefer being misted, like most plants, in the morning or in the day, so that way they can sort of absorb that extra moisture. But if you have to, if you're dry and your house is dry, you can give them a little bit misting at night. And just really be sure to watch for any insects or an infestation of any kind, because that is one way to get it pretty quickly. But I mist mine both morning and night, depending on my school schedule and everything. Just that way they can get that humidity that they really need. One of my favorites that I actually picked up this week was a whalefin Sansevieria. It's even got a little pup on it too. But these are just beautiful, nice thick tall leaves. They're quite succulent. They're quite sort of dry feeling, and they don't like to sit in water. You can let them dry quite a bit, but they definitely are a nice statement piece to any living room. Another one that I have over here is, this is my Diefenbachia. This one here I got from another hardware store, really struggled with, and some of the leaves are still rebounding. This one's I'm probably going to have to cut off as soon as it starts drooping a little bit more, but it has actually pushed out this new leaf just in the past 2 weeks here. Took its time because it is winter time. It's not getting as much light, it's not growing as quick, but it really enjoys it. Once again, this is one of those cover pots that I just sort of made. It's in terracotta, moisture wicking, really great for a lot of houseplants. It is a little bit more tricky with Calatheas. You definitely have to watch them if you have any Calathea, or especially ferns. I would not recommend putting a fern in a terracotta pot. I have a button fern here that, that's a little dry. Pilia falcata, I believe. Excuse my Latin, but it is definitely recommended to put it in a plastic pot and then just put it in a little cover pot, so that way it's a little bit nicer aesthetically wise for your living room. And another plant that I really have enjoyed, where was it? One of my newer plants, there it is. I've really enjoyed it just so far with that bright dash of color. This is the Philodendron Moonlight. Once again, I got it. It was in pretty good condition. The leaves were curled up pretty good, but seems to be handling it pretty well for coming all across Canada pretty much, and dealing with the cold. I'm quite impressed with this plant because it's got a new growth, new leaf coming out here. So I'll definitely keep you posted on how this one turns out.